But let's read this news here, man. Let's talk about Rand Paul claiming the election was in many ways stolen. Now, as all of you know, yes, let's not play games. We don't want to get the stream taken off the air. And YouTube has said that if you say certain things in combination, they'll just take down the clip.
What combos like Iraq, Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, Al Qaeda?
That's okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, you can say that.
You can say those smashed up.
Yeah. You can say you can lie to the American people at least and call for a repeated war, which gets us into this 20-year quagmire. And you can claim that Trump is a Russian asset still to this day, working for the Soviets, not just Russia, because they said 1987. All right, they said 1987, and you are okay. But if you claim two things, the first is that there's widespread voter fraud or error, and the second, you combine that with a statement that it changed the outcome, they remove your content, boom, just gone from YouTube, which is really interesting considering a lot of what's coming out right now, and this statement from Rand Paul, which I will now read. The Hill reports, quote, "The fraud happened. The election in many ways was stolen, and the only way it will be fixed is by, in the future, reinforcing the laws," Paul said during a hearing with testimony from Christopher Krebs, the president's former cybersecurity chief, who was fired by Trump after he reported there was no interference in the election. Paul made the remarks as Krebs, wearing a mask, looked on skeptically, his arms crossed in front of his chest. Thanks for that, The Hill. The remarks were notable because Paul is seen as one of the senators who might join a bid by Rep. Mo Brooks to challenge the election's outcome and overturn the results in several states, despite a series of court decisions that have rejected claims of widespread fraud as unsubstantiated. That is false. Fake news from The Hill. Most of these cases, as far as I know, and it's challenging because there's many, were procedural grounds. In fact, I'll put it this way. Maybe that's true, but in the hearing, it was stated by numerous people that the claims in these lawsuits pertaining to fraud were never actually ruled on the merits. So they didn't say necessarily it was unsubstantiated that there was widespread fraud. They said things like you have no standing, or it's too late to sue, or, this is a criminal matter that must be investigated and not for a civil court or whatever. I'll also point out Chris Krebs, who said there was no interference. He said specifically from a security perspective, because he's a cybersecurity guy. He said fraud, well, that's a criminal matter I have nothing to do with. So that's really important when we're talking about this. Now, I don't know if Rand Paul actually will step up, especially, I don't know if you heard Mitch McConnell basically saying, leave Trump high and dry, don't do this.
I don't think we can count on the GOP for support in this matter, as much as I would like to. I'm curious about Rand Paul going out on a limb here. What do you mean? He's always sort of been a renegade, right? And doing his own thing. And, he's really making kind of a stand here. Him and Ted Cruz have really stepped up, taken some action to try to, investigate it, at least see what's happening. Yeah. And take a principled stand. I guess Rand's comfortable out there by himself, huh?
He's always been. He's always, what did he filibuster the NDA, yes. the defense bill? Yeah. That's supportive of Trump. Trump says he's going to veto it. I don't know if he can because Republicans and Democrats are alike are like, war good, more war, fantastic. More war. We don't care what Trump thinks.
Ted Cruz started smoking pot like 6 years ago.
Is that true? What?
I don't know. It just seems like he started smoking pot. He totally changed. He used to be this uptight nerd, and then he started growing a beard. Now he's like this hippie Republican.
I mean, something did happen.
I have no other explanation.
Yeah, I don't know.
He took mushrooms or something.
Well, come January 6th, we're going to find out. I'm willing to bet the Republicans with absolutely zero political willpower are going to sit back and be like, but I don't want to do what he wants.
Dude, Rand Paul is not a Republican. Like, he's a Republican, but he's not anything like Mitch McConnell. Like, he's a completely different creature. Like,
yeah, he is.
Maybe he's like a libertarian.
He is very libertarian,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a lot like his dad.
But because the Libertarian Party has no representation in our government,
they run as Republicans.
It's why Bernie runs as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the interesting thing about the progressive left is that Bernie, when it became obvious that he wasn't going to win, or I should say that when he folded because he should have kept pushing it, he just dropped down and started licking the feet of the DNC establishment, where Trump was like, no, excuse me, no, and then he took over. And then the Republicans, it was inverted. It's interesting. Bernie and the progressives were forced to drop down and beg the establishment for some kind of time and presence, and they barely get any leverage. Trump was the other way around. Trump took over, and the establishment Republicans were like, oh no, what do we do? You're the Trump party now, baby. So they had to listen to what Trump wanted, and they had to get behind Trump to the best, to a certain extent. And it's really funny how many Trump supporters really did say okay to the Republicans. And now Now things are getting totally different. I mean, first of all, I'll tell you, when I see memes from Trump supporters mocking police officers, I don't know if you saw this one, because you saw what happened in Michigan where the cop at the state capitol wouldn't let the Republican electoral candidates, in the building.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden, Trump supporters posting memes basically saying these cops are, not heroes. They only care about their paycheck and not the will, not the Constitution, stuff like that. So that sentiment's already changed. And now they're basically going nuts after Mitch McConnell, saying it's time for him to, for a new party leader.
I think it's
gone.
definitely fair to say that the GOP is fractured and that the political realignment is happening right now in a very interesting way, where a lot of people who are anti-establishment are learning that they have a lot more in common than they have different from each other. But also, very interestingly, the Washington Examiner also just tweeted that in Nevada there are still legal arguments that, quote, 42,000 people voted more than once, that at least 1,500 dead people voted, and that 19,000 people voted even though they didn't live in Nevada. So we're still hearing some of these arguments. Will they actually translate and mean something?
That was stated under oath.
Yes.
By a Trump campaign lawyer.
Exactly.
So if they think there's no evidence and he's lying, congratulations. You got him. The Trump campaign lawyer is going to go to prison for lying to Senate under oath. Congratulations. There you go. So how about now we get his files, we present them in a court of law. That way you can all send the Trump campaign lawyer to jail. How does that sound?
Never will happen.
They don't want these guys going to court.
Of course
they don't
not.
want the merits presented.
Absolutely not. No discovery, none of that.
Yeah, when the Trump lawsuit, I think, was in Nevada, the judges didn't even, the court didn't even want to look at the evidence. They were like, no, we're not going to do that.
The Supreme Court, which is in favor of him, which was selected, there's a large number of people that were selected by him for the Supreme Court that were from the 2000 Bush v. Gore case. They're like, oh, we don't want to hear it as well. Or like what other writings on the wall do we need to see that there's a big rift within the establishment?
I don't get why the court gets to pick what they decide to look at. Like they work for us. So why don't we just give them what to look at?
They're an appellate court, not a trial court. So
they still work for the people, right?
But they're an appellate courts, right? So the way it works is you can file in court and have your trial, and then the judge issues their ruling. Congratulations, you're a citizen, you have that right. Now, appeals courts, they can reject you and say the law was upheld. So when the Supreme Court says we're not going to look at it, usually it's because they're like, this decision was legit. Bye. We're not going to bother with it. There you go.
Usually. But in this situation,
it was really different because Texas, the lawsuit from the states, it's called original jurisdiction, meaning who does a state go to when they're filing a lawsuit against another state? They can't go to a circuit court because a circuit might be in one of these states or totally unrelated. So they file with the Supreme Court. Alito and Thomas believe they're obligated to take up these claims to represent this, to oversee these disputes between the states. But apparently Trump's appointees, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Kavanaugh, did not agree and felt that they have the right to say no to these cases. We'll see if anything comes of it. I think one of the important things people need to realize about whether or not the election was stolen or anything, right now we're well past the point of the election. I don't think at this point the election matters in any way. Okay. The media said Joe Biden won. The Electoral College came and had their official votes, and they said Joe Biden. They voted for Joe Biden. Joe Biden gets the electoral votes. What we're talking about right now is Trump versus the establishment. Can Trump win in this ongoing fight? The numbers of votes don't matter as far as I'm concerned. Okay, you know why? We get a report out of Antrim in Michigan, where a guy straight up says these machines are designed to have massive errors. Like that was his assessment. And we had Hunter Avalon on the show, and he said, I don't believe it effectively. He said, this guy's a Trump supporter, and he's crazy, and he's put out false information before. And I'm like, great. That's exactly my point. The left is going to be like, why would I believe this report? It's from a Trump supporter. And I go, it's a great point. Why would I believe anyone who's not a Trump supporter when they come to refute it? In which case, all that really matters, confidence, legitimacy, and influence. Trump wins if more people believe in him than anything else. I don't know if that's going to happen, especially with people like Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell really, really hurting Trump's legitimacy, like seriously hurting it. When regular people are not paying attention and you get some crazy Kraken story, Hugo Chavez or whatever, I'm going to be like, what? I don't know. What is that? That sounds crazy to me. And so that hurts Trump's legitimacy. If they came out and made a constitutional argument about changing the rules, a regular person says, "Wow, that's interesting. Constitution. Oh yeah, violation of the Constitution. I understand that." Trump needs to convince more people, because right now, I'll tell you this: if 100 million people woke up today, or tomorrow morning, and all said Trump is president, Trump would be president. Regardless of seriously, if everyone in this country just one day said the Constitution doesn't exist, then it wouldn't exist. Its power is held in the fact that people swear an oath to it, that we believe in the system. We have confidence the system exists, and that's what matters. So Trump is fighting a kind of battle to prove some kind of legitimacy. The reason it's going through the courts and the reason it's going to go to January 6th when they dispute is to use the system that exists now to assert legitimacy. That's it. But I'll tell you this. They say it's over. Betfair, right? They did political betting. I think they're based in the UK. Said December 14th, the Electoral College voted. Joe Biden has won the presidency. A bunch of Trump supporters got really mad. Started, tweeting at him saying, "What do you mean? Like they haven't even counted the votes yet." And they're like, "Well, if you have a problem with it, we'll revisit later." The reason Betfair probably paid out is because they want to get their taxes in before the end of the year. Their losses and their I guess the way you can put it is, they take all this money for bets, and if they hold on to it into the next year, that's all revenue plus. So they need those losses. They need to be like, here's what we paid out and lost. We'll come back to it later if Trump somehow becomes president. It might even be Kamala Harris. I mean, look, Joe Biden was coughing up a storm. He's an old man.
And he announced he's going to be taking the COVID vaccine next week.
Oh, my God.
So, yes.
Anaphylaxis?
That's publicly announced.
I think he'll be fine. But
why
I'm not saying he won't. I'm just adding another layer to that. He's going to be doing that as well.
So what's happening is there's a system that exists. There are stamps on envelopes, certification, right? Official governor's seal. That's the kind of thing that a regular person looks at and says, "I recognize that as legitimate." But what if someone came to you with a seal that said, office of the new? What do we saw? We saw a lawsuit that went to that signed on for the Texas lawsuit. The Texas lawsuit got two amicus additions from New California and New Nevada.
Yeah, what was that?
States which do not exist.
Yeah.
But what if someone believed it? What if the media announced? What if every news outlet said, the state of New Nevada now exists and here's its territory? People would be like, wow, and they believe it. Then when someone sues, people would be like, it's a thing, right? So that's what the media has been relentlessly saying Joe Biden is president-elect, even though president-elect isn't determined until January 6th. They want him to be legitimized. Trump is fighting for legitimacy. The best path for Trump to get legitimacy is on January 6th at this point, and it's extremely unlikely. Maybe what happens is that some information comes out, from now until then, and then you have these Republican electoral candidates who cast their votes procedurally. So then, something flips, and then the count says, Republicans support Trump, Democrats support Biden. There's a dispute. It goes to Supreme Court or whatever. Who knows? Trump ends up winning, something like that. It's using the system's legitimacy to claim you are president. But I tell you, I think that, when they're saying it's over now, then they're saying, but on January 6th, we'll see Trump's final plan. It's like, it's not over election-wise until January 20th, when Joe Biden, swears an oath and he's sworn in to the Oval Office and all that stuff, and Trump leaves. What if Trump doesn't leave?
He will leave if he's supposed to.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.